Hello, welcome back to my channel, Thriving, Not Just Surviving. Today what I want to talk to you about is the 5 books that changed my life. And really, how I've chosen these books is I wanted to focus on the book that really made significant improvements and changes to my life. The first book I want to talk about is a book called Why We Sleep by Dr. Matthew Walker. Now, when this book came out, it was a bestseller. When I read it, I was shocked by how little I knew about how important sleep is. He's a scientist, and he's a specialist on sleep. And he talks a lot about the different impact that sleep has on different aspects of our life. One of the things, for example, that I found quite surprising is that if you haven't had enough sleep, you shouldn't really be getting behind the wheel of a car, because people who've had bad sleep actually measure worse in driving tests than people who are over the limit for alcohol. Another thing which I found really surprising was, for example, we actually look better, not just to ourselves, but to other people. So when they've tested if somebody's had a full night's sleep, strangers think that they're actually younger than if they've had very little sleep. But I thought I knew a lot about how to get a good night's sleep, and I certainly thought I had a good routine. But it was only when I read this book that I realised how detrimental, for example, caffeine is to sleep. And I used to be lying next to my husband at night and he'd be snoring away and I wouldn't be sleeping very well at all. I'd be tossing and turning. And I used to feel so jealous. I used to think, how does he do it? How does he sleep so soundly? And it's only when I read this book that I realised it's because he has never drunk tea or coffee. He's not a tea or coffee drinker at all. So reading this book really changed my life because I drastically reduced my caffeine consumption. And now I only have 1 cup of coffee in the morning around 8 o'clock, and then I drink nothing else, no other caffeine at all for the rest of the day. So, and just that making that one change and getting a better nighttime routine, it changed my life, because now my sleep is fantastic, and I can really say it's all thanks to this book. So this one was a life changer for me. I highly recommend it. The next book is by Lama Surya Das, and it's called Awakening the Buddha Within. Now, this is quite an old book. It was written in 1997, and I read it about 10 years ago. To be honest, I was hesitant about including this book in this list, only because, I didn't want to come across as trying to sell you on a religion, per se. I mean, I'm not particularly a religious person. Spiritual, yes, I'm very spiritual, but I wouldn't say I'm very religious. But what people don't understand about Buddhism is that Buddhism isn't actually, Buddhism in the way that Buddha meant it to be taught. He didn't mean it as a religion. He meant it as a way of life, and it's a way of life which leads to greater happiness. Actually, a lot of Buddhists say that you can practice the tenets of Buddhism and be from any religion. So, you can practice compassion, you can practice mindfulness, you can practice meditation, but you can be a Jew or a Christian or a Muslim or even from no religion. Really, Buddhism teaches you just how to be a more compassionate person, how to be a better human, and how to be a happier human. But for me, that was only part of the reason why I love this book. The real gem about this book was he includes so many stories about the life of Buddha, and I'm a sucker for stories. And there's so many gems in here, so many little details about his life. Really taught him how to be a better person and helped on his journey towards enlightenment. So this book, I highly recommend it. It was really a game changer for me and I loved it. Right, the next book is by Tim Spector and it's called The Diet Myth. Now, when this book first came out, it was published in 2015 and I read it when it first came out. These days, the idea of gut health and the idea that we have bacteria in our gut I would say it's quite mainstream. But back when this book first came out, it was quite a fringe idea, and I hadn't really heard of it, and I don't think it was mainstream. This book was the first book that I read that really taught me about the fact that I have microbes in my gut, and the fact that if those microbes are kind of the positive bacteria, is going to be really positive for my health. It's going to mean that I have higher immune system, and it's going to mean that I'm happier because a lot of the serotonin in your body is actually manufactured by the bacteria in the gut. And it also taught me about how, if I have a good diet that is full of green leafy vegetables and fruits and fresh food, that's going to encourage the good bacteria. And if my diet is bad, full of junk food and full of bland colours, then that's going to encourage the bad bacteria. In particular, bad bacteria loves sugar. So this book, it really changed the way, I would say I was a healthy eater before, but it changed the way I think about how important healthy eating is. Before I was just thinking about it from the point of view of calories in and calories out and making sure I keep trim, but I wasn't thinking about it from the point of overall health and how important it is to my gut bacteria. And I also learnt about, probiotics, and now I have a daily probiotic. I take kefir daily, and later on I'll be including information about how I make that kefir myself. But yeah, this book really improved my knowledge of nutrition, and it was a game changer for me when I read it. So the next book is Taking Charge of Your Fertility by Toni Weschler. Now, this book, when I read it, I thought that I knew, obviously I went to school and I learned about how babies are born, both from my parents and also from school. And I thought I had a good idea of how my body works. I thought I knew about fertility, and I thought I knew about, exactly how babies are born. But when I read this book, I realised how ignorant I actually was. I didn't know, shockingly, before reading this book, I didn't know that I'm only fertile for 2 or 3 days of the month. I guess they don't teach that knowledge in school because they don't want people using kind of natural fertility cycles as a birth control method, because it would lead to a lot of teenage pregnancies. So they just kind of, at school, they just kind of teach you that you can get pregnant any time of the month, and that's just not true. There's only a few days of the month that a woman can get pregnant. You just have to learn how to read the signs of your own body. And when I bought this book, I was in a long-term relationship, and me and my partner were heading towards marriage. So we used this book as a method by which to avoid getting pregnant. I came off the pill because the pill had always interacted negatively with me. Specifically, what it did for me is it killed my libido, and I sort of think there's no point in being on the pill if you have no libido. So I went off the pill, and instead we started avoiding pregnancy by using the natural fertility method that's found in this book. And then during the times of the month that I was fertile, we would use a barrier method. And then when it came time for us to want children and to try for a baby, again, I turned to this book and used the techniques that are in this book to monitor my cycles, to know when I was going to be fertile, and to know when it was the right time to try for that baby. And I'm happy to say we now have 2 beautiful daughters, aged 11 and 7, so it was highly successful in that regard. So I highly recommend this book. It teaches women about their body. I even recommend men read it, because you need to know about your partner, men who are in romantic relationships with women. And it also teaches you about, later in life, the menopause and that kind of thing as well. So it's a really fantastic, comprehensive look and explanation of a woman's fertility, and I highly recommend it. It was a life changer for me. Right, the final book on the list is a book called Ask and It Is Given by Esther and Jerry Hicks. Now, this book was one of the original kind of law of attraction manifestation books. It teaches about how your thoughts create your reality. It is one that's very much on the kind of new age spiritual side, because this whole book was channeled by Esther, and she channels the being Abraham, who he explains that he's kind of a group of higher dimension entities who want to give wisdom to people on earth. And Esther Hicks channels this group of beings called Abraham, but it's kind of written in the book that he comes through as one entity, even though it's a group of entities. This person, this group of beings, Abraham, basically explains about how we get what we think about every time in life. So if our thoughts are negative, we're going to be attracting negative things into our life. And if our thoughts are positive, we're going to be attracting positive things into our life. But now, I think for me, the reason why this book stood out more than other books on this topic that I've read, one of the most famous books on this topic, for example, is The Secret, but the reason why this book stood out for me more than some of these other books is because I really feel this is like a manual for actually how to improve your thoughts in a positive direction. And sort of, I feel like a lot of the other books, they talk about how important it is to be positive and to think pleasant things and stuff, but they don't actually teach you how you can get there. This book is different. This book has kind of a manual in the back of different exercises which you can do to actually increase the positivity of your mind. And the one thing that made the biggest difference to me was the introduction of a daily 15-minute meditation. Because before I read this book, I was still meditating, but I was aiming to do 20 or even 30-minute long meditations. And to be frank, what that meant is that on the days when I was too busy for those meditations, I would just end up not doing them. So it meant that I was meditating less often. And what this book taught me is that it's better to have consistency, even if it's shorter sessions, but being very consistent, to have that daily session makes all the difference. And since reading this book, I've been doing a daily 15-minute meditation. Now it's very rare that I miss it. Maybe I'll miss it maybe once a month or something. Circumstances outside of my control will mean that I'll miss my meditation. But in general, I do it every day, and it has made a colossal difference to my life. I would say I'm definitely happier. I would say I'm a better parent and a better partner. Now, when I feel myself getting triggered and I feel those negative emotions, I realise inside my head that there's a fraction of a second where I have that choice to either react negatively or to react, take a deep breath and react positively. And I'm far more likely, as a result of my regular meditations, to react positively because I recognise that choice. Before I meditated, I didn't even feel I had a choice. When I got triggered, bam, I would just fly off the handle and react negatively. But now, as a result of the regular meditations, I'm much better at realising that I have a choice, and that even if something's triggered me, I can still choose whether to behave, whether to react really negatively or to react in a more positive way that is healthier for myself and for everyone around me. So yeah, this one was a game changer and I highly recommend it. So I hope you really enjoyed this roundup. I would love to hear your comments. Have you read any of these books yourself, or what books have you read that have really changed your life? I am going to be including links to each of these books in the description, so if you want to get them, you can click on those links and you can find out more. But I would love to hear more from you. Just tell me about what you think and what books you've read would have changed your life. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you'll stick around for the next video.